The story starts as the protagonist dribbling an extra, and the protagonist's name is Isejai. He is participating in a national championship of his high school region, and this is the final. His team is losing by 1-0 and his friends from the bench shout his name. With all this support, he dribbles one more extra and he is about to score. He stares at the goal and the national championship flashes in his mind. But suddenly his friend asks for the ball. The protagonist thinks that his team will manage to score, and with that the tie will be made. With this he remembers that soccer is where the players are from and that is a team, so he passes to his friend, his fellow striker. How is the number 9? He already imagines that he will score, but unfortunately it ends up hitting the post. The protagonist cannot believe it, and soon after the opposing team goes on the counter-attack. The skillful number 10, named Kira, dominates the ball and begins to dribble, and after that he kicks hard in the angle of the goal, indefensible for the goalkeeper, declaring his team's victory, 2-0. The number 9 cries and regrets having missed a goal in his face. His teammates try to say it was not his fault. Meanwhile, interviewed by a journalist who calls Kira a new Japanese jewel, he thanks his team and says that without them none of this would be possible. Meanwhile, the coach of the protagonist's team gives a motivational speech about defeat and that none of this was a waste of time. And for him his team is the best soccer team in Japan. While the protagonist is riding his bicycle, he thinks about how he is an unknown high school sophomore forward and that this is reality. So he starts to reminisce of the past and apologizes to Noah, who is his idol as a professional player, the famous center forward from Japan, known as Noah. When the protagonist was little he watched Noah's games and he wanted to be like the center forward of Japan. So he trained more and more to become a future player for the Japanese national team. That was his big dream, but now it seems that his dream is going to end up on paper. The dream of becoming a great center forward star in the Japanese national team, and win the dreamed World Cup, since Japan has never achieved this feat. After his memories, the protagonist reflects that if he had not passed at that moment of the game, for his fellow striker, he thinks that if he had kicked at the goal, would that have made the result different? This consumes him inside. He starts to tear up and cry because he knows that sport is a team game and he can't win alone, but he really wanted to win that game. When we get home, the protagonist's mother asks how his game went, and he tells her that he lost, but what matters now is that he is very hungry, but unfortunately it didn't work out too well. During dinner his mother talks about a letter from the Japanese Football Union. He wonders why he was selected and the next day goes to the Japanese Football Union. Coincidentally, after arriving there, Isejai runs into Kira, his opponent in the final. Kira greets him, says he remembers him and thinks he is a great player with excellent vision. He even jokes with the protagonist saying that he would probably give him great passes if he were on the same team, and the protagonist is totally grateful and happy for Kira's compliment. So the two of them, not knowing what is to come, enter a room that is full of great young players. While observing several players, the protagonist notices one thing in common: they all seem to be attackers, and after his thought, a mysterious man arrives congratulating all who are inside this space. He says that there are exactly 300 sub-to-0 center forwards, and that he chose in a totally personal and biased way. His name is Jinpachi, and he says that he was the man hired for Japan to win the much-dreamed-of World Cup. All the players are surprised about this idea of Japan winning the World Cup, and apparently nobody knows who this man is after all. He said that for Japan to be the best in the world there is one thing missing, and that is the birth of a revolutionary center forward. And because of this, he is going to make an experiment to turn just one out of all these center forwards into the best in the whole world, and that's what this institution called Blue Lock is going to be for. Jinpachi explains that Blue Lock is a project, and the forwards will have to undergo the special training he has developed, and they cannot go home and have to say goodbye to the soccer they all know. Kira raises his voice and is unhappy about this idea. According to him, everyone has a team that's special to them, and some players from this place are about to compete nationally, so he can't just participate in something he doesn't even understand and abandon his team. After Kira's speech, many other players start complaining too, saying that they need to play nationals, and also questioning various measures, among them, about living together. After several complaints, Jinpachi says that anyone who wants to go home can go, and everyone is wide-eyed at this. But he continues and asks about what is more important between a national title or being the greatest center forward in the whole world, so he begins to humiliate the forwards and even says that it gives of despair to see. Jinpachi wonders what soccer is all about. Is it a sport where 11 people are fighting side by side and joining forces? Is it a sport where they take care of the emotional connections between the players themselves? Is it complete devotion? Is it playing for the teammates? And so he states that this is why this way of playing in Japan makes their soccer so mediocre. As well as this catchphrase, he says that soccer is about scoring more goals than your opponent. That is, the best is decided by scoring more goals. That is why the Blue Lock's idea is to have the best center forward. With all this talk, our protagonist Iseji decides to make the first move of all. He says he wants to be a center forward, so he runs towards the huge door behind the Blue Lock project. The others follow him, and finally the place where the most intense soccer in this world will take place begins, which will be the Blue Lock. After everyone is done changing, Jinpachi tells them that the people they are sharing in the rooms will now be roommates and rivals that will help them grow. He says that the skills have been quantified and ranked by him, in other words, totally personal and biased, and that's how the numbers mean on their uniforms. Soon they can see which ranking he is in the middle of 300 center forwards. The protagonist looks at his arm and is surprised to realize that it is number 299, which means he is in second to last place, one of the weakest. After that, Jinpachi says that each one's position can change depending on the results of training or competitions. And finally, the 5 best players will be able to play in the tournament that will start in 6 months. This tournament will be the Under-20 World Cup, that is, 5 will be able to participate in the Japanese national team at the age of 20. But since not everything is good, Jinpachi says that whoever loses in the Blue Lock will never again be able to play in the Japanese national team for the rest of his life. So he starts a test to measure the level of the athletes. The challenge is that they have 133 seconds, and whoever takes the ball will be the catcher, and whoever has the ball when the time runs out will be eliminated. In other words, if you don't get caught, you will be saved. Jinpachi also remembers that he cannot use either hand. To start the challenge, Gurima is with the ball, and intends to hit Iseji, that is our protagonist, because he is the one with the lowest ranking. He tries to hit, but fortunately Iseji diverts. Meanwhile, Kira is outraged with this method of seeking the perfect center forward by ego. Gurima catches Kunigami off guard with this. Kunigami is very angry and activates the mode Ichigo. To defend himself, Gurima uses Iseji as a human shield, so Iseji is the one who ends up getting hit. Now there's less than a minute left, and if he doesn't hit anyone, he will be eliminated. With fewer seconds left, Gurima is injured. It would be the perfect moment for our protagonist to hit him, but he changes his mind and says that this is not right. He intends to face an even stronger opponent. Soon he changes his look completely, and suddenly a Meguru steals his ball, and now only 10 seconds remain. Meguru almost hits Kara, and now only 5 seconds remain. He makes a high pass, and with only 3 seconds left, the protagonist realizes all this ball and his eyes change color. He wants to become the strongest guy and hits hard Kira, his great rival and now the eliminated Blue Lock, who is outraged and can't believe what happened.